Hello, everyone. Get excited. It is Dr. Moss. I've missed you all so much. Good evening. Happy Tuesday. I'm so excited to see you all back with us. I'm back with Bedtime Stories with the Black History Month edition. I have my Black History Month dashiki on in to go along with Black History Month. And so this evening, we're going to be reading this awesome, powerful, compelling story about one of the methods that were used in the 1960s as a way to protest the inequality that African Americans experience in the world. And so this story is called Sit In: How Four Friends Stood Up by Sitting Down. So I'm so excited to read this story to you all. Again, this story is written by Andrea Davis Pinkney and illustrated by Brian Pinkney. So we know that the illustrator is the person that drew all these awesome pictures that we're going to see in the story. And the author is one that wrote all the awesome words. So let's get excited to sit back and hear about how these four friends stood up by sitting down. All right, let's go with it. We must meet hate with love. Ooh, what a powerful quote. These were Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words that got them started. Four hungry friends, eager to eat, each took a seat at the Woolworths lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Azale sat quiet and still, with hearts full of hope, with Dr. King's words strong and close. They were college students with a plan. It was February 1st, 1960. They didn't need menus. Their menu was simple: a donut and coffee with cream on the side. Woolworths was busy, so the friends waited, patiently, silently, without a fuss. They were the only Black kids at the counter. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Azale sat while everyone else got served. At first, they were treated like the hole in the donut, invisible. Others tried to ignore them. The waitress watched and refused them. This was a sign of the times: whites only. This was the law's recipe for segregation. Its instructions were easy to follow. Do not combine white people with Black people. Segregation was a bitter mix. Segregation. We've heard that word segregation before at Bruce. Let me think back to the Bruce history and why that word is so important. I remember because Bruce was one of the first four schools in Memphis to integrate. So they were once segregated, meaning that Black kids couldn't go. But then on that awesome day, October 3rd, 1961, we know the Bruce Three, Dewana Cowles, Menelik Fomby, and Harry Williams were the first Black students to integrate a once segregated school. So even we are part of history. So let's keep reading about this other set of kids who were historic as well. Now it was the friends' turn to ignore and refuse. They ignored the law and refused to leave until they were served. Those kids had a recipe too, a new brew called integration. I just brought that word up. It was just as simple: combine Black with white to make sweet justice. For them, integration was better than any chef's special. Integration was finer than homemade cake. Integration was a recipe that would take time. So David, Joseph, Franklin, and Azale sat quiet and still, with hearts full of hope, with Dr. King's words strong and close. Be loving enough to absorb evil. I love it. They sat straight and proud and waited and wanted a donut and coffee with cream on the side. After sitting and waiting and wanting, a police officer came, but the four friends wouldn't leave. The police officer didn't know what to do. The students were doing nothing wrong. No crime in sitting, no harm in being quiet, no danger in looking hungry. The officer left the lunch counter without doing anything. The Woolworths man turned off the lights. He announced, "Woolworths is closed." So the customers left, including the four friends who went home to dinner where they were served first. News had already spread about the sit-in. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Ezell got their names in the paper. The next day, February 2nd, 1960, more students showed up at the lunch counter, sitting still for what was right. No reservations needed at Woolworths. The students seated themselves. They were dressed in their best clothes. They were polite and determined. No guesswork for the waitress. The young people knew the menu by heart. They ordered, no food came. So they sat in silence and waited and wanted a donut and coffee with cream on the side. The waitress reminded them, "Whites only." But those kids wouldn't budge. They didn't move. Until they were served, they refused. All they wanted was some food, a donut and coffee with the cream on the side. To pass the time, the students read their school books. They wrote in their journals. They finished their homework. They didn't need to read the menu, so they studied for tomorrow's test. What had started in Greensboro spread faster than a grease fire. There were lunch counter protests in Hampton, Virginia, Nashville, Tennessee, Montgomery, Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia, and many other southern towns. If lunch counters could go from whites only to all welcome, if segregation could turn into integration, if Black people and white people could break bread together, everyone would pass the test. Everybody would score high, A plus, with the coffee and cream on the side. But many folks were not motivated to make that grade. As the sit-ins grew, angry people gave the students a big dose of hatred, served up hot and heaping. Coffee poured down their backs, milkshakes flung in their faces, pepper thrown in their eyes, ketchup not on the fries but dumped on their heads. They yelled at the students, "We don't serve your kind. Go home. Goodbye." The students wanted to lash out, but couldn't. They wanted to strike back, but didn't. Sitting still was so hard. Practicing peace while others showed hatred was tougher than any school test. Woo! Can you all imagine what it's like to have pepper thrown at you, to have hot coffee poured on you, and you have the discipline to just sit quietly? They're awesome. Now, there were news cameras filming the sit-ins and viewers at home watching it all on TV. The students were more determined than ever to show the world the true meaning of peace. So they sat in silence with hearts full of hope, with Dr. King's dream true and close. These were the words that kept them going. We must meet violence with nonviolence. I think that is an awesome and excellent way to live. The students sat proud and still and waited and wanted a donut and coffee with the cream on the side. Soon the sit-ins grew bigger and wider. White students joined their Black friends to protest the unfair treatment by restaurant owners who would not serve food to Black patrons. They also opposed segregated libraries, buses, parks, and pools. With so many students gathered, people got scared there would be fighting. They were afraid of all those youngsters grouped together for a cause. Even though the students were committed to peace, The police now took action. They accused the students of loafing. They arrested them. They took them to jail. The students didn't resist. They didn't fight. Instead, they sang freedom songs to keep the peace. They held Dr. King's words steady and close. Demonstrate calm dignity. Soon, folks were busy arguing about who was right and who was wrong, that they stopped going to Woolworths and other segregated places. Some shops were forced to integrate to keep their businesses alive, but the struggle was far from over. In April, an activist named Ella Baker organized a student leadership conference at Shaw University in North Carolina to help the young demonstrators. With Ella, the students formed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. Inspired by Dr. King, they came up with the powerful words of their own. These are the words that became the SNCC slogan. We are all leaders. When President John F. Kennedy got a taste of SNCC's integration, he didn't sit in, he stepped in. On June 11th, 1963, the president went on TV. He urged Americans to treat each other fairly. He then told Congress to take action against segregation. This became the Civil Rights Act of 1964. On July 2nd, 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson made the act a law. It banned segregation in public places. The hard work and courage of those brave students paid off. They had taken a bite out of segregation. Now it was time to savor equality. Now they were ready for a big sip of freedom. Their order was simple: a double dose of peace with nonviolence on top. Hold the hate, leave off the injustice. Now the students had the right recipe for integration. The steps were easy to follow. Start with love. Number 2, add conviction. 3, season with hope. 4, extra faith to flavor. 5, mix black people with white people. 6, let unity stand. 7, fold and change. 8, sprinkle with dignity. 9, bake until golden. 10, serve immediately. Makes enough for all. After weeks of sitting, when their backsides ached, after months of being still, when their feet fell asleep, after years of praying for laws to change, when they were so hungry for equality, the young people finally got what they ordered. It was worth the wait. It was served to them exactly how they wanted it. Well done. And oh, integration sure tasted good. Those courageous young people enjoyed every bit. They came back to Woolworths for seconds and thirds, and for many helpings after that. When the sit-ins were all done, the students left a big tip. A donut and coffee with the cream on the side is not about food, it's all about pride. These were the words that filled them up. The end. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I hope you all enjoyed this awesome story that where we learned all about. We learned all about some of the happenings of the civil rights movement, where they had schools that were still segregated, and then we had buses that were segregated. And so we moved from schools being segregated to buses to to now restaurants. And so that was a story of how these four friends stood up by simply sitting down. So I absolutely love this story. It taught me so much about courage, taught me so much about discipline, and taught me so much about how we can really, really, really be the change that we really, really, really want to be. All we have to do is be peaceful in our protests and remember some of these famous words that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. says. We must meet love with hate. Absolutely love it. I hope you all enjoyed our bedtime story tonight. I hope you all learned something new, learned something great, and I can't wait for our next bedtime story. So now it's time for you all to make sure you get some sleep. Make sure you all do all your homework, check those teams, check those assignments, get on iReady so that we can be sure that you all are ready to go for tomorrow. Everyone have a great evening and go Bulldogs.